Welcome to the Mind Body Inflammation Lab. I'm Robert K. And this is,
Dr. Rafael.
so we're here again talking about all the wonderful things inflammation can bring us.
Wonderful.
I don't know if wonderful is quite the word, and most people would,
Not the word I was looking
no.
for. But, inflammation is, we talked about this before. Inflammation is not the enemy, but it becomes the enemy after long-term inflammation. So, yeah, let's dig into it. What are we going to talk about today
So you're right.
with
Inflammation is
inflammation?
not the enemy. A lot of things aren't our enemy that we look at like our enemy. Those things are quite often warning signs in my space. I look at that like, what is this trying to tell us? And we talked a
Yeah.
lot about how habits manage our inflammation and the foods that we intake after those habits is the second time we spoke. Now, if we're looking at the natural progression, our habits create our diet brings inflammatory process to our body and to our gut. Now what? So, the interior lining of my gut is inflamed because I had French fries, because we all know I'm going to have some French fries.
Well, you've been following
Have you been
along.
following? Now, what is the process from there that starts to do damage to the tissue in the body?
Yeah, because gut inflammation affects the entire body, which is practice why, some people think like, oh, I have a gut problem. So I need a gut test to give me that answer about this gut problem. But there are a lot of things that happen in the body, inflammatory things that are going on in the body that are related to gut inflammation. So it's, you got leaky gut, which everybody, it's not, it used to be unknown
So,
about leaky gut.
well, I mean,
And that's kind of big one. That's really making it hard for your body to process the foods because you've got this permeability.
now, when people say leaky gut, what do they mean? Like, I've never seen a true definition of it. I've heard it as kind of a buzzword. And quite frankly, a lot of times those buzzwords in those circles kind of just run their course and you never hear about them again. It's
Right.
just something almost like clickbait for that moment. So, what is leaky gut?
That's true. So think of your stomach as like a long tube. And then along this long tube, we have this, we'll call them villi. These like little finger-like tentacles. And they're very closely, they're tight. They have like a tight junction. They're so tightly packed
Are we
together
calling them villi
that,
because that's their name?
no, that's
I
their
don't know.
name, not because they're bad.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Now, let's say you eat something that's not good, and not just one day. We're talking about like, a chronic standard American diet. This tight juncture, which is where the food passes through, begins to have sort of an opening like this. And this is where things can spill out and leak. And so this allows partially digested proteins, toxins, bacteria to enter your bloodstream, which is bad. You don't want it to get into your bloodstream because then that triggers systemic immune response all throughout the body, not just locally to the gut. So then you have this is, you can get like rashes and hives and headaches and fatigue. You could have mood issues just from this, what we call intestinal permeability. So it's just, it's not
So is
good
it
to have
is
leaky
it in
gut.
the intestine that this is happening or is it in the stomach?
This is happening in the intestine. Mainly leaky gut can happen. It's not happening in the stomach. The stomach is like your blender. It's happening to some extent a little bit in the small intestine, but mostly when we talk about leaky gut, we're talking about the large intestine is where that's.
Interesting. I just learned something today. I was today years old.
Okay.
So, okay, so these things start to leak into the bloodstream and it's seed oils. It's the things that we spoke about in the previous discussions we've had. Now it's into the bloodstream. And what is the negative effect on the rest of the body?
So then the body says, warning, warning, something is here that should not
That
be
alarms.
here. That triggers your immune system to respond. Inflammation is a response from the immune system to say, she needs help. Let's go help her. Let's send in reserves because she needs help. So it triggers this immune system response. And then that is not just happening in the gut, it's happening all over the body where you have this inflammatory response because of the immune system, because you have particles that don't belong where they are. They should be inside that digestive tract. But because things got inflamed, they're seeping. So leaky gut is really something that has to get, and you can test for this to see if you have intestinal permeability.
So yeah, my stomach just made a noise. Does that mean it's leaking? Uh, so, so how do you test for this?
So I use a gut stool analysis to give me information about what's happening in the gut microbiome. There's a GI map. There's one called Gut Zoomer. They're specifically looking for markers of inflammation, like protectin or lysosome. These special markers tell us there's inflammation in the gut, and markers that tell us the immune system is reacting. And then we use that to identify leaky gut. I couldn't say, oh, well, Rob, in this 4-foot section of your large intestine, there's leaky gut. But we know from the analysis that at some point in the process, you've got leaky gut. And it really doesn't. It can be all throughout, or it can be infections. But the gut analysis really helps us to narrow in as to what's going on. And really, like, calprotectin is the gold standard for finding intestinal inflammation. And that's just a marker on that gut analysis, a stool analysis test that gives us
So this
information.
leads me to a lot of different questions in different directions, and I don't want to take this on forever, so I'm not certain which direction to go with. When this seeps into my bloodstream, I understand that my liver and my kidneys, their goal and their job is to detoxify and clean out the things that are going through. Now, is that where we start to see inflammation in those spaces? Is it
Yeah.
precursors to prediabetes and diabetes? Is that a precursor to kidney disease?
Yes, you've hit it. It's called systemic inflammatory cascade. So, inflammatory cytokines produced in the gut that are entering our circulation system. Remember, they trigger this inflammation, and then they can contribute to conditions like arthritis, cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disorders, because, and that's why this interconnectedness is why it's so important to address your gut health when you're looking at inflammation. I think that's like step one. Like, of course, we need to clean up the diet. We need to look at, like, our routines and what we're doing. But step one is like run analysis to see what's going on in your gut microbiome and where the inflammatory markers. I mean, this is like the very first step to take, so that you know where to focus on when you're working on a protocol for your health.
So let's just say my gut is leaky, it's porous, it's wide open. What are the steps can I fix that? And if I can, what are the
Yeah.
steps to getting me back to something a more healthy standard?
So I will say that leaky gut takes about a year. If you've got a really severe case of leaky gut, it takes about a year to reverse that. And that means you're doing what you should be doing with the food, and you're avoiding inflammatory foods. And that doesn't mean to be on an anti-inflammatory diet, so to speak, but you are making conscious choices of, like, okay, I'm going to avoid the things that are going to make this worse. And then there's nutrients that really help. Inflamed intestinal walls can't properly absorb nutrients. And so that can cause deficiencies, which can affect energy and tissue repair and organ function all throughout the body. You want to be taking nutrients that are going to support your leaky gut to be healed. And also, you want to be adding in nutrients that you may not be absorbing well because of the leaky gut. So, nutrients like glutamine, that's a food source for the intestines. It's great. Making sure that you're eating a lot of fiber, 25 to 30 grams a day. And then something called polyphenols, which berries, strawberries, blueberries, raspberries all fall in that polyphenol category. And so getting L-glutamine, getting good fiber, because that's like food for the intestines and the microbiome, and getting those polyphenols, and then filling in the gaps nutritionally where there were issues really helps as
Now, are
well.
those
The process looks like removing foods that are going to create more inflammation, which we kind of already talked about in another podcast. Let's not add foods that are going to promote inflammation. And then let's add nutrients that are going to help us, like L-glutamine, like collagen. Those things are food for the digestive system, like fiber. Fiber is really important. I think I mentioned that 25 to 30 grams is where you want to be. And then polyphenols, berries, which is basically a fancy polyphenols. There's a category that you can use is just having like berries. And then you're really feeding the good gut microbiome, which is your immune system. Because remember that I said that inflammation is this response that's basically the immune system is responding. It's hyperactive to what's going on. This proteins or toxins coming through the leaky gut, not being where they belong, the immune system overreacting. And so making sure that you're getting the right nutrients and not adding in inflammatory foods is what's going to heal leaky gut over time.
Now, I know that serotonin is produced in the digestional system. Is leaky gut going to inhibit the production of serotonin? And if so, wouldn't that just add to more inflammation because those depressive feelings get us in a negative space and then continue to roll us in the wrong direction?
Yeah. You ever heard of like having a gut feeling?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I feel it in my gut, right? You never point to your head. You feel it in your gut, meaning like you feel it you have those feelings there. So because the brain and the gut are connected by the enteric nervous system that has all these neurons, it has actually more neurons than the spinal cord, actually, between in the enteric nervous system. Inflammatory molecules from the gut can travel via the vagus nerve to the brain, affecting mood, affecting cognition, affecting neurological function. And so that's why gut issues often correlate with anxiety, depression, brain fog because of this gut brain axis. On top of this connection with this communication that goes from the gut and the brain to the gut and the gut to the brain, when we're not eating foods helpful for serotonin production goes down. So you have two things happening. The inflammation that can travel from the gut to the brain. And then secondly, you're also having less. You have a deficiency in serotonin, and so then that also affects your mood. So there's kind of multiple things happening here when you have inflammation in the gut.
That's
It
interesting.
all goes back to immune response.
It sounds like something the Mind Body Inflammation Lab should talk about.
I know.
So,
That's why we're
what are
here.
the tests that we would take real quick? Because we've covered a lot. We don't want to overwhelm. What are the tests that you would offer somebody if they're concerned with this? And what kind of symptoms would they recognize if it's something that doesn't quite jump out at them immediately?
Doing a gut analysis is just a test that I think everybody should have it run to see where you're at, where your base is at. And that's a great test because it's going to check for intestinal permeability. It's going to look for the gut. It's going to check for bacteria, pathogens, parasites, and viruses. It's going to look for antibiotic resistance genes and any kind of digestive dysfunction or digestive function markers. And the kind I like uses DNA sequencing and protein analysis to kind of give us a really clear picture of what's happening in the gut. We need to start there. When we have a conversation about inflammation, we should start in the gut. And I know it sounds crazy because if people are like, well, my inflammation is in my knee, why would I look at my gut? Well, for the very things that we've talked about, that gut inflammation can affect systemically inflammation everywhere in the gut, and things like leaky gut have that effect too. So you want to get those tests done. There's other tests that you can run, but I think that like the basic gut zoomer from Vibrant Wellness, which gives you a comprehensive gut health panel, I think that's kind of the way to get good information about what your status is in terms of inflammation in the gut. You start there and then you work your way out to
So,
other
with
areas.
people that don't have direct access to the great Dr. Michelle, what do they have to present to their physician? Because I've worked in conventional medicine and I know they didn't sometimes say the right words to get on the right track to having some of these tests done. So, what would be the symptoms that I would present that I would say, Doc, this seems something. Can we do some gut health?
So this goes into kind of a deeper question because when you talk about traditional allopathic medicine, it's all divided into parts. So gastroenterology, he's only going to worry about your stomach. And the neurologist is going to worry about your brain. Cardiologist is only going to worry about your heart. And, it's all separated out. Meanwhile, the true story is that it really is one body that functions together. And so if you went for your stomach, you think gastroenterologist. I'm going to go to a gastroenterologist. It's hard to get a gastroenterologist to order a functional medicine stool analysis. They weren't trained on it. What they were trained on is we're going to do an endoscopy. We're going to look, or we're going to do a colonoscopy. We're going to look and we're going to see what we see with our eyes after we've completely depleted the gut microbiome with the things you have to do before you get a colonoscopy or
And
an
they see
endoscopy.
inflammation. That's what they go in there and see is inflammation. I've been part of that
And
world.
they say, you have inflammation. I'm like, well, there's easier ways to test for inflammation.
Speak out of neutral.
It's difficult to get that done. You could see it, I guess, in C-reactive protein is a lab test that's done with blood work. So you could ask your primary care physician or your gastroenterologist to run that lab C-reactive protein, because that when it's high, it tells us that there is systemic inflammation. ESR is another blood one. That's erythrocyte sedimentation rate. That tells us about general inflammation. But like I said before, calprotectin, that is the gold standard for intestinal inflammation. That is the test you want to see. Calprotectin that is high, that tells us there's intestinal inflammation. So I would ask for those. I would ask for C-reactive protein, ESR, or a fecal test of calprotectin
And
as a basic level.
now this is just a random question. You could work with people all over the country, correct?
Yes, I work with people all over the country. And in fact, you can find this gut zoomer on and you can order it for yourself. So you could just click on it and order it.
So go ahead and plug your website. We're here already.
You can go to mynaturalwellness.com and you just click on order labs and you'll see the gut zoomer is there. And once you've done that, they send the labs to me and we set up some time to review them together. But also I wanted to, on my blog, and I'll share it with you so you can share it with the listeners too. I've got some herbs that soothe the gut. So if you're interested in my top 5 herbs that I like to recommend that are very soothing for the gut, I'll send that too, and we can put that in the show notes. Beautiful. So that you have as well.
Yes.
And we could put the link to the gut zoomer in the show notes as
And
well.
I'll be website link in there also.
Yes.
I got Whiskey
That would
Pie
be
in my
wonderful.
house today. He's buzzing my head.
Is he? I didn't see
No,
him.
it's driving me crazy, really
Fair.
crazy. But
Can't see him.
well, is there anything else on the list of things to speak about today?
Well, is there anything else about gut inflammation that we haven't covered? Let me think.
We talked about previously to this how we would end up in that space. We've talked about how it transfers from the gut to the rest of the body and what that means. And then we've talked a little bit about the process to start not only diagnosing it, but moving forward with it.
So I think the only other thing that I would say is that gut alters the balance of good bacteria in your gut. And it basically reduces short chain fatty acids, which is to say that those have an anti-inflammatory effect throughout the whole body. An imbalanced microbiome can affect hormone production, neurotransmitter synthesis, and immune regulation. This is why I'm harping on gut inflammation and looking at the gut first. When you feel like an inflammatory issue, go to the gut first, fix that first. Then you help yourself in that you've really covered a big portion of where gut inflammation could be coming from. So leaky gut, short chain fatty acids, the immune system, and then we talked about kind of the systemic inflammatory cascade. So that really covers gut inflammation.
Again, you've wowed us all with your brilliance. Much appreciate your time today. We
Good.
always look forward to the next time. Being this great and on to people.
Well, thank you for having me on again.
Have a good day.
You too.